identifying as a yogi. James H. Exum/Sakshi, Austin, Texas. Copyrighted August 7th, 2026. All rights reserved. Yoga is not a religion. Hinduism is a religion. Yoga is a science, the science of the soul. Sakshi. After years of sincere study, disciplined practice, teaching, research, writing, and dedication to the sacred path of yoga, a disciplined path of union, self-knowledge, and inner transformation, I identify myself, respectfully and humbly, as a yogi, one who is devoted to the practice, study, and lived principles of yoga. I do not make this declaration as a boast. I do not make it as a claim of arrival. I make it as a witness to the work, the discipline, the sacrifice, the inquiry, and the devotion that have shaped my life over time. For me, to be a yogi is not simply to perform postures, which I am no longer physically able because of my Parkinsonian problems. Yet I can still speak about philosophy. To be a yogi is to live under the discipline of awareness. It is to let the breath teach. It is to let the body reveal. It is to let the mind be examined. It is to let the heart be softened. It is to let the soul be called again and again toward truth, humility, compassion, and service. The meaning of dedication on the yogic path. Dedication on this path is not proven by time alone. Years matter, but years without transformation are only numbers. Dedication is proven by returning to the practice when it is not easy, by studying when the mind is tired, by teaching when service is required, by researching when truth demands patience, and by continuing when recognition does not come. This is the labor of the path. This is the refining fire. Over the years, the work has refined me. The body has learned discipline. The breath has learned steadiness. The mind has learned observation. The heart has learned compassion. Yoga has become a mirror before me. In that mirror, I have seen strength and weakness, attachment and freedom, confusion and clarity. I have learned that the true practitioner does not turn away from what the mirror reveals, but stands before it with courage and honesty. Study, research, and the love of learning. As a researcher of yoga, I understand inquiry is part of the path itself. Research is not a separate occupation standing outside the practice. It is one of the ways I bow before the vastness of the tradition. It requires careful reading, deep listening, disciplined reflection, and respect for what has been preserved through generations of seekers, teachers, scriptures, and living experience. Study has taught me humility. The more I study, the more I understand that the tradition is wider than any single book in my personal Vedic library. It is deeper than any single discourse and greater than any one teacher. To study yoga is to enter a living stream. I drink from that stream as a student, and whatever I offer to others comes first from having knelt beside that water myself. Research as the foundation of writing, discourse, and public teaching. My research is one of the primary ways I practice Svadhyaya, self-study through reflection and the study of wisdom teachings. Through research, I examine texts, teachings, practices, experiences, questions, and insights. I listen for what the tradition is saying. I listen for what life is asking. I listen for what the practice reveals. From that listening, my books, articles, essays, discourses, and video teachings take form. When I author books, I do not write only to fill pages. I write to follow a teaching until it opens. A book demands patience, structure, depth, and surrender to the process. Research allows me to move beyond passing opinion into sustained reflection. It helps me gather, organize, interpret, and present the principles of yoga in a way that may guide the reader toward clarity, practice, and inner growth. When I author articles and essays, I enter a more focused chamber of the work. The article allows me to take one teaching, one question, one principle, and hold it to the light. The essay allows me to move more personally, to follow a thought as it rises from practice, experience, study, and reflection. In these shorter writings, research gives my words discipline. It keeps the writing from becoming loose opinion. It asks me to be clear. It asks me to be responsible. It asks me to honor the depth of yoga even when the subject is brief. For me, an article may become a lamp placed beside one teaching. An essay may become a path through one inner question. Neither form is small when it is written with sincerity. Each carries the possibility of meeting a reader at the exact place where understanding is needed. Each can open a door, correct a misunderstanding, encourage practice, or offer language to something the seeker has already felt but not yet named. When I offer discourses, research becomes spoken contemplation. A discourse is not, for me, a performance of knowledge. It is a sacred unfolding. It is where study, practice, experience, and reflection are allowed to breathe together before the listener. I do not seek merely to lecture. I seek to open a space where the teaching can be heard, where the question can deepen, where the listener can turn inward and examine life through the light of yoga. Through discourse, research is transformed from gathered information into living reflection. What has been read must be understood. What has been understood must be practiced. What has been practiced must be tested by life. Only then can it be spoken with sincerity. In this way, discourse becomes an offering, not an argument, not a display, but a way of sharing what has been studied, lived, questioned, and refined. In video production published on YouTube, the teaching enters another field of service. The camera becomes a witness. The microphone becomes an instrument. The editing becomes part of the discipline. The digital platform becomes a doorway through which the teachings may travel beyond the walls of my studio or of a classroom and reach the person sitting alone, searching, listening, and ready to receive. I understand that publishing on YouTube carries responsibility. Because the teaching may reach people I may never meet, the offering must be prepared with care. The message must not be careless. The words must not be empty. The presentation must not reduce yoga to appearance, entertainment, or surface inspiration. Research helps guard the integrity of the work. It helps me speak with depth, clarity, reverence, and accountability. Through books, articles, essays, discourses, and videos, my research becomes service in many forms. It gathers knowledge, refines understanding, and returns that understanding to others in a form they can receive. The written page, the spoken word, and the recorded teaching all become bridges. Bridges between tradition and contemporary life, between study and practice, between the inner path of yoga and the public work of teaching. Work without attachment to reward, nishkama karma. This work is not undertaken for reward, recognition, praise, profit, or personal advancement. It is undertaken because the work itself is part of the path. In the language of the Bhagavad Gita, a sacred yogic scripture on duty, wisdom, devotion, and liberation, this principle is known as nishkama karma, selfless action performed without attachment to personal reward. It is also central to karma yoga, the yoga of selfless action, in which one gives full effort to the duty, service, or offering at hand while releasing attachment to results. The Sanskrit phrase most closely associated with this teaching is karme evidhikaras ti ma phealukadakana. One has the right to action, but not to ownership of the fruits of action, from the Bhagavad Gita. This does not mean indifference, laziness, or lack of excellence. Rather, It means that the yogic worker gives the whole heart to the work while refusing to let the ego, ambition, anxiety, or craving for reward become the motive. For my writing, research, discourses, teaching, and video production, this principle is essential. The books, articles, essays, spoken teachings, and YouTube videos are not created merely to gain attention or approval. They are created as offerings of inquiry, practice, and service. The work becomes a form of sadhana, spiritual discipline, or intentional practice, through which knowledge is clarified, devotion is expressed, and the teachings are shared for the benefit of others. In this spirit, the value of the work is not determined only by how many people see it, praise it, publish it, purchase it, or respond to it. Its deeper value lies in whether it is done with sincerity, discipline, truthfulness, humility, and alignment with Dharma, right purpose, ethical duty, and sustaining order. To work in this way is to honor the teaching that the yogi acts fully, serves sincerely, and then releases the outcome. Practice as discipline, embodiment, and transformation. The path to becoming a yogi is shaped through practice that is steady, sincere, and embodied. Physical posture has value, but posture alone does not make a yogi. The practice must reach beyond movement into breath, attention, conduct, and consciousness. Through repeated practice, the practitioner learns patience with the body, steadiness of the breath, and discipline of the mind. I sometimes joke and say, one can go further in life standing on your feet than standing on your head. Dedication means showing up not only when practice feels inspiring, but also when it feels ordinary. It means practicing when progress is visible and when it is hidden. It means accepting that yoga is not a performance, but a gradual refinement of perception, behavior, and being. The ethical foundation of the yogi. A yogi's dedication is also ethical. The classical path of yoga places great importance on how one lives, speaks, thinks, teaches, and relates to others. Principles such as non-harming, truthfulness, moderation, non-greed, purity, contentment, self-discipline, self-study, and surrender are not abstract ideals. They are daily practices. To walk the yogic path is to allow these values to influence decisions, relationships, speech, teaching methods, scholarship, and service. The title, yogi, therefore carries responsibility. It asks the practitioner to continue aligning outer action with inner aspiration. Teaching as service and responsibility. As a teacher, dedication is expressed through service. Teaching yoga is not merely the transmission of techniques. It is the careful holding of space for others to encounter themselves. It requires preparation, compassion, discernment, and responsibility. A teacher who walks the yogic path recognizes that students are not objects of instruction, but whole human beings deserving respect, safety, and dignity. Teaching also deepens humility. Every student becomes a reminder that yoga expresses itself differently in each person. The teacher remains a student, learning through observation, dialogue, mistakes, growth, and continued practice. In this way, teaching becomes another doorway into self-study and service to others. Examples of teaching impact. One example of teaching impact is seen when students begin to understand yoga not merely as exercise, but as a disciplined way of living. Through instruction, explanation, demonstration, and reflection, students may begin to connect posture with breath, breath with awareness, and awareness with conduct. In this way, teaching helps move the student from external movement toward inner attention. Another impact appears in the way teaching can encourage consistency and self-trust. A student who once approached practice with uncertainty may gradually learn patience, discipline, and confidence. The teacher's role is not to impose transformation, but to create conditions in which transformation can arise through regular practice, careful guidance, and compassionate correction. Teaching also has impact when it brings philosophical teachings into practical life. Ideas such as truthfulness, non-harming, self-discipline, contentment, and self-study become more than ideals when they are connected to daily decisions, relationships, work, speech, and service. In this way, students may begin to see that yoga continues beyond the class, the page, or the screen. The impact of teaching also extends through writing and public discourse. A book may reach a reader who is seeking direction. An article or essay may clarify a single principle at the right moment. A discourse may give language to an inner question. A YouTube video may introduce a distant viewer to a teaching that supports reflection, practice, or renewed dedication. Each form becomes an extension of the classroom and a means of service. These examples of impact are not measured only by numbers, visibility, or public response. Their deeper measure is whether the teaching helps others become more aware, more grounded, more compassionate, more disciplined, and more connected to the inner meaning of yoga. In this sense, the teacher's impact is both visible and unseen. Visible in the words, practices, and resources offered, and unseen in the quiet shifts that take place in the lives of those who receive them. Humility and the lifelong nature of the path. To identify as a yogi is not to suggest completion. It is to accept the responsibility of continuing. A yogi remains a student of life, of breath, of consciousness, of discipline, and of compassion. The path does not end with years of experience. Rather, years of experience deepen the awareness that the path is vast. Humility protects the word yogi from becoming an ornament of the ego. It reminds the practitioner that the title must be lived more than claimed. One may identify as a yogi only with the understanding that the identity must continually be renewed through practice, ethical conduct, self-examination, and sincere devotion. A personal declaration. Therefore, I identify myself as a yogi because yoga has become one of the defining paths of my life. Through research, I seek understanding. Through writing, I seek expression. Through teaching, I seek service. Through practice, I seek transformation. Through dedication, I seek alignment with the deeper law of the path. I do not use the word yogi as a crown. I use it as a commitment. I use it as a reminder. I use it as a vow to continue walking with humility, integrity, discipline, devotion, and truth. The identity of yogi is not something I claim because the work is finished. I claim it because the work has claimed me. It is not suddenly acquired. It is slowly cultivated. It is shaped through study, purified through practice, tested through service, strengthened through discipline, and protected through humility. It is earned not through perfection, but through perseverance. It is sustained not through recognition, but through continued devotion to the path. So I stand in this word carefully. I stand in it prayerfully. I stand in it knowing that every day I must give evidence to the name. If I write, let the writing serve. If I teach, let the teaching serve. If I research, let the inquiry serve. If I speak, let the discourse serve. If I record and publish, let the offering serve. Let the work be done for the work itself, as nishkama karma, and let the fruits belong to the path, to the people, to the divine, and not to the ego. This is my declaration. I am still learning. I am still practicing. I am still being refined. I am still being taught by the breath, by the body, by the mind, by the scripture, by the student, by the silence, and by life itself. And because I continue to walk this path with sincerity, discipline, service, and devotion, I respectfully and humbly name myself a yogi.
And there it is. In this video, I did something totally out of my usual methods. I did not introduce myself at first, nor did I tell you the date and time this was being produced. So I'll do it here at the ending. I am James Exum, a yogi, self-proclaimed with humility. It is Friday evening at about 10:40. I started this maybe 20 minutes ago, and I'm in Austin, Texas, in South Austin, Texas, in my studio. I noticed when I was watching the video being narrated, I was on a page where I could read it, I noticed that, well, it occurred to me that some of the words being said could be used and as a teaching method different ways. Such as, say, a basketball coach or a football coach could use some of those phrases and words and inspiration to teach his players. A man in the pulpit could change some of those words around and pass it on to his parishioners. Yoga is not a religion, it is a science. It is a science of the soul. But I also thought during all that this type of knowledge, this type of writing is and the subject of this particular video, this discourse, this essay, is very, very inspirational. I believe that. And it should be shared with others. Please do so if you get a chance. And I'll close here. As I always say, be good to yourself, be good to others, and be good to strangers. And remember, life is not perfect. Problems come and go, and we're dealing with some major problems right now in our wonderful country. But those problems, like those in the past, they too shall pass. So I'll say good night to you, and thank you again for your time and your attention to my words and my phrases. Good night.